За Россию! За победу! Ура!
President Putin has always loved this most sacred hurrah of Russia's calendar of remembrance, the heavy metal of military strength, clad in the red-eyed romance of sacrifice, soaked in the blood of 25 million Soviet citizens, when Moscow and the righteous world defeated Nazi Germany. This annual show and tell is central to Russia's DNA of a mighty nation that will rise up if pushed into a corner. But this year, the pomp and circumstance is measured against the inconvenient truth of reality, of what this army is up to when it is steeped in blood in Ukraine. Rather than goose-stepping in Red Square. Today's parade has weaponized the past to justify the present. President Putin drew a direct line from the great patriotic war against Hitler to the current struggle against a bullying fascist West, played out in a country whose existence so offends him, he didn't even dignify Ukraine with its name.
Уважаемые товарищи, сегодня ополченцы Донбасса вместе с бойцами армии России сражаются на своей земле. Вы сражаетесь за Родину, за ее будущее, за то, чтобы никто не забыл уроков Второй мировой, чтобы в мире не было места палачам, карателям и нацистам.
The man at the center of the chaos that he's unleashed spoke for only 11 minutes and did not, as feared, declare a mass mobilization in a war he still calls a special operation with grotesque understatement. The great patriotic war against Hitler needed no explanation. It was a brutal struggle for survival. This one is a struggle with the truth. So much is mangled in the spin cycle of propaganda and lies, and so much ignored. There is no official explanation for the bombing of civilians in Ukraine because officially it never happened. Or for the mass graves and torture because they never happened. Or the humiliation of the army that struts its stuff today on Red Square, but whose reproachful corpses in body bags litter the battlefield because they never happened. And yet, even if the truth dares not show its face on Russian television, it has a way of creeping through the digital cracks, like this anti-war message that flashed up on millions of screens thanks to some hackers. Outside Russia, the protests were brazen and colourful. The Russian ambassador in Warsaw found himself doused in fake blood. Part of Russia's myth-making is the celebration of the army as fearsome yet honourable. In London, the Secretary of Defence went to the National Army Museum today to make the exact opposite point.
Through the invasion of Ukraine, Putin, his inner circle and his generals are now mirroring fascism and tyranny of 77 years ago, repeating the errors of the last century's totalitarian regimes.
What is this government doing to prepare British society, and indeed the armed forces, for what could be a long haul and some serious sacrifices?
We've said, and our aim is that President Putin must fail in Ukraine. Right? He must fail in his mission to actually conquer Ukraine, which is basically what his mission was, to destroy as he's now turning it into, and he must fail in that task.
Today in Red Square, the past was enlisted to justify the present. But the present has also corrupted the past. Just ask 97-year-old Ivan Lusin, surveying the damage to his home near the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. He won his chest full of medals by fighting for Moscow as a young man in the Second World War. Now Moscow is the aggressor. History knows few things as dangerous as strong military powers that feel like cornered victims. Defeat is not an option for President Putin, and although he didn't mention the nuclear option today, he let the ballistic missiles do the talking. The danger with the war where both sides accuse each other of behaving like Nazis is that it leaves little room for compromise and too much room for escalation. Well, that London press conference in my piece was attended by Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, Vadim Pristine, and the Tory MP Tobias Ellwood, who's of course chairman of the Commons Defence Committee. I caught up with them both afterwards. Ambassador, first of all, when you heard the Secretary of State there talk about the commitments to your country, were you pleased with what you heard, or do you want to hear more?
Absolutely, that's what I learned, that we are thinking the same lines, that we are getting so much of what we need, especially long-distance weapons, but we need more. And I'm happy that this has been considered.
And you need it right now, don't you?
We need it right now. We need it yesterday, actually. But we're happy that it's coming.
Is it stuck in the pipeline? Is it stuck at the border?
Some of the stuff is already in Ukraine, and that we're happy with that. But we need more, and especially when you mention like tanks and air support. This is something is being considered right now.
Tobias Ellwood, we are supporting Ukraine rhetorically and militarily, but as we have discussed many times before, this conflict could escalate. Is the British public prepared for an escalation, essentially over a war that, where we're not even sending soldiers at the moment?
And you're right, we do need to take the nation with us. The question I placed to the Defence Secretary was the correlation between the cost of living here in the UK going up and what's going on in Ukraine. The reason why food prices are going up is because the grain can't get out of Ukraine. Oil and gas, the same as well. You sort out Ukraine, it's in our interest, not just to do the right thing to support our Ukrainian friends, but also because of European security.
Ambassador, what would you say to the British public, to potentially prepare them for the next level of sacrifice, for a conflict that could be a long haul and could involve people, could involve British soldiers eventually? We don't know that. It's not on the cards at the moment, but it might be.
We don't know that, you're right. What allows us to think that it won't happen is that we're fighting our fight. Ukrainians are doing this, and that's why you're helping. That's why your public should be preparing to help us more, to allow us actually
because your
to stop
fight
them.
is our fight
Exactly,
as well.
Exactly. And believe me, that Putin, when he tells people these stories, he's actually talking not about fighting with Ukraine. He believes that he's fighting with NATO on Ukrainian territory until last Ukrainian soldier. So that's how deep he is in his lies, and that's what he's feeding to his own people. So allow us to fight our fight, help us before it spills over to the whole Europe.
Well, earlier I spoke to the former Russian Prime Minister, Mikhail Kasyanov. He worked in Vladimir Putin's first administration, but has since become a vocal critic of the Russian president and an opposition figure. I began by asking him what he thought about the Victory Day parade.
In fact, I think just we first should recognize that Mr. Putin has stolen Victory Day, Remembrance Day from Russians, and in fact turn it into instrument of political military propaganda.
And what do you think of him now? I mean, people have speculated about his health, his mental state, the extent to which he's isolated.
I cannot make a medical judgment of his state of health or just behavior, but political behavior, that's absolutely clear. He's already just outrageous and out of normal political mind. He's very nervous and angry on everybody around, on everybody in this world. The whole world just against him, and he's very, very angry. But today's speech on the parade just surprised me. That was not aggressive as I could expect. And it means he already feels problems he is facing. And that's why just I see that just the changes already started to appear somehow in his even attitude and his strong attitude for these operations and this war. And that's why he put a target already, just not to change the regime, not as he called before denazification or something like that, but simply to protect people of Donbass. For this simple reason, to protect people of Donbass, which was artificial danger created by himself, developed by himself, he already just arranged this war. He started this war, which taken lives already of dozens of thousands of people.
So do you think that means Western strategy is working? Or do you think they should be doing something else?
Working. Yes, absolutely. It started working, absolutely. In fact, this could be a good instrument for Ukrainians and for the whole world to save Europe from further aggression, potential aggression, which Mr. Putin could undertake if he defeating the Ukraine.
Do you think the party or the military or any of those institutions in Russia would ever move against him?
Unfortunately, I couldn't predict, I couldn't describe just the exact way, but the logic tells and knowledge of Russian people that Russians should do this, Russian people should do, not a military coup inside the let's say, ruling elite, if we can say so.
Mr. Kasyanov, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, as President Putin commemorated the end of a war 77 years ago, the war that he started in Ukraine less than 3 months ago rages on with no end in sight. In Mariupol, a city that has come to symbolize Ukrainian resistance, Russian occupiers staged their own rather poorly attended Victory Day parade. But they still haven't taken control of the Azovstal steelworks, where Ukrainian soldiers remain under siege. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilson, reports now from Zaporizhia on the last civilians to escape. Lindsay, over to you.
Matt, you can probably hear the sound of the siren here in Zaporizhia. That is a sound that Ukrainians have grown very used to. Now, when you think about the last war, World War II, that President Putin was on about today, well, you know, that's very complicated for Ukrainians because there were Ukrainians who collaborated with the Nazis, but there were many more who fought on the Soviet and Allied side against Hitler, and they would be commemorated today as they are in Russia. But now it has a very different feeling. And what Ukrainians say is, we were occupied then by Germany, and part of our land is occupied by Russia now. And that is why people watched President Putin with great bitterness today, as he invoked what Russians call the Great Patriotic War. Last night, they escaped Putin's not-so-great new patriotic war. They managed to get on the last buses out of Mariupol. Many have survived for more than 2 months in a bunker in the Azovstal steelworks, where Ukraine's Azov battalion is holding out against the overwhelming force of the Russian army. Safety is baffling, unfamiliar, overwhelming. In Azovstal, food was running out. Here in the humanitarian aid tent, it's plentiful. We met Dmitro as he emerged, so exhausted he wasn't sure what to feel.
I don't know, because I'm very tired. I be in the bus from 6 a.m. till now. Yes. It's, but I feel happy because free air and Ukraine.
Today we met Dmitro's family, including Spike the dachshund, who didn't get along with either the cats or the larger dogs in the bunker. The experience was both terrifying and tedious, they said, as one day melded into the next and the bombardment never stopped.
Жена всегда говорила мне, чего вы смеетесь, чего вы ржете, тут вокруг война. Ну, я такой человек. Жена плакала, я смеялся.
It must have been very, very difficult. Were you very afraid? Yeah.
Это было сложно, все-таки вы боялись, наверное, было страшно?
Очень.
Реакция у людей разная.
Back in Mariupol, the Russians continue to pound the steelworks. The Ukrainian soldiers inside know they will die if they don't surrender. But their resistance has denied President Putin the chance to declare total victory today in Mariupol. Instead, they staged a small parade, attended by those residents who support Russia. They laid out the St. George's ribbon in one of the few parts of the city they haven't destroyed, at least not all of it. The eternal flame was lit at the monument to those who fought the Nazis in World War II. Mariupol was occupied by the Germans then, and it's occupied again now, a point that President Zelensky made in his address today.
Великий народе великої України.
a slick production designed to make him look as different as possible from President Putin. Modern, not a throwback to the last century. Relaxed, but defiant.
Звільнили від нацистів Маріуполь. Вони вигнали нацистів з усієї України, але названі мною міста сьогодні особливо надихають нас, дають віру, що ми точно проженемо окупантів з власної землі.
Those who've witnessed the destruction of Mariupol, their home city, found today's Russian celebrations there hard to stomach.
Все очень грустно и непонятно, зачем это все. Вообще, зачем?
Да, какая не может цель просто полумиллионный город уничтожить, столько людских. В этом полумиллионном городе каждая судьба поломана. У всех была жизнь, у всех. Это только по стране. Столько изломанных, исковерканных судеб. Зачем это все, непонятно. Никакая цель не может оправдывать такое.
The next generation feels it too.
9 мая – это не тот праздник, который нужно праздновать еще и в таком месте, снова по поводу войны. Это просто, если это увидит какой-то ветеран, мне кажется, он тоже будет очень огорчен. Этот же праздник для ветеранов, а в итоге вот так снова все повторяется, и они просто танцуют на костях, можно так выразиться, наверное.
One Ukrainian family amongst millions whose lives have been destroyed by Vladimir Putin's warped sense of history. Well, President Putin didn't call for full mobilization or an escalation in the war, possibly because he can't, because his military isn't in good enough shape. But nonetheless, it continues. One of the things that he did say was he talked about Russian casualties and he praised Russian doctors and nurses. That's unusual. He doesn't like to talk about casualties. The Ukrainians don't like to talk about their military casualties either. I was thinking, talking to Dmytro then, about all the young men just a bit older than him who were there on the front line, especially in the east. Many of them are losing their lives. We don't know how many. And that's the problem, because although he didn't call for escalation, there's no sign that this is coming to an end at all.
Lindsay Hilson, thank you very much indeed. Well, Igor Jaques is the deputy head of the Office of the President of Ukraine and head of foreign policy. He joins us now live from Kyiv. Thank you very much for coming on the program again, Mr. Jaques. When you see those extraordinary, rather bombastic pictures of the parade in Moscow today, what goes through your mind?
It goes to my mind that there is a parade without victory, which Russian Federation so severely expected when starting the open warfare against Ukraine on 24th of February. So nothing to celebrate, nothing to tell to your people that you gained about. So, well, they had this parade, they have this 9th of May, good for them, but very important that despite all the expectation, Ukraine is still standing, Ukraine is struggling, and Ukraine will definitely win.
Right. And can you ever imagine holding your own victory parade in Kyiv? And what would victory look like for you?
Well, first of all, our victory parade will be very soon in Kyiv. Believe me, very, very soon. It will be much more meaningful, much more realistic, because it will be definitely having achieved the victory, having defended our land. And definitely during this parade, many international guests would come to Kyiv to celebrate together with President Putin and Ukrainian people the victory over aggressor.
But the reality might also be that you will be missing a large chunk of your country in the east, occupied by Russia, and in the south, and of course, Crimea.
No, because the real victory, the overall victory, will be when all Ukrainian territories will be Ukrainian as of 1991, when Ukraine became independent. So no reason now to speculate about the status of Donbass or the status of Crimea. My president had it several times said that it is subject to negotiations with President Putin directly, but unfortunately for him, probably for Putin, he is not ready to negotiate on the highest level. So that's why definitely the victory will be full-fledged and all Ukrainian territories will be under control.
I know the situation in Mariupol has been very difficult now for months. Has your government effectively abandoned the small number of very courageous soldiers still holding out in the Azovstal steel plant?
The government of Ukraine is in constant connection with the Ukrainian armed forces, which are still left in the Azovstal steel plant. So no Russian narrative about that we forgot about them or refused from them should be listened about. We managed to evacuate all the civilians from the Azovstal steel plant. And now President of Ukraine is seeking the possibilities of how to make those Ukrainian armed forces survive and alive. And definitely they will never surrender. This is the dream of President Putin of Russia, for them to surrender. Ukrainian soldiers do not surrender. Ukrainian soldiers struggle and win.
Right. Now, you've applied for fast-track membership of the European Union, which is something very important to you and something at the heart of this conflict back in 2014. Today, President Macron said that could take years, if not decades. How disappointed are you by that?
Well, first of all, yes, I have to reiterate that today we made another more significant step towards our membership. We finalized filling in the so-called questionnaire. We filled in today part 2, the most significant part about a key about the adherence of Ukrainian legislation to the European Union. So now the ball is in European Commission's court. They are now preparing the opinion avis, and then the next step would be candidate status for Ukraine, which we're expecting very soon. If you're asking about me today about the words of Macron, everyone quotes his second part, but the first part of this quote was about candidate status. And Macron said that even provided that the candidate status is given to Ukraine, then there has to be some time passed in order to get the membership, which is true.
Right.
Well, we'll have to spend several years. But very important that this the word candidacy out from Macron.
We're going to have to leave it. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Igor Jaques, thank you very much indeed, and good luck.